Welcome to the Bear Sheep broadcast, a space for building stability, preserving legacy, and strengthening the communities we call home. I'm Kalia Heaven Barak Yahoo, founder and president of Bear Sheet, a nonprofit organization based in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm honored you're joining us today. This show exists to have real conversations about homeownership, wealth building, family transitions, and the decisions that shape generations. Today's conversation is a pickup from where we talked about last week about planning for family emergencies. And I'm very excited. We have Abiyahu Akai with us today, who's going to introduce himself in a moment. But he has a BS in business administration and financial planning. And I thought he'd be an excellent fit for this episode to help us prepare for some of these financial emergencies that come up. How are you doing, Abiyahu Akai?
I'm doing very blessed. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing blessed. Thank you for joining us on this episode today and bringing your wealth of knowledge to help us prepare. No one wants a financial emergency, but it is always good when you have someone who is educated in this area and can help give us advice so we can prepare properly. So, thank you for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
So just to get us started, last episode we talked about preparing for financial emergencies. And one of the examples, and one of the things really, if you're on Reddit, if you're on Google, you will see a lot of questions on people are getting laid off. They're having big bills come up and they're wondering what they should do. And I know many times you can't predict if a layoff is going to happen. You can't say that I know this is going to, I may need a new vehicle next month, but these financial things happen. So I'm hopeful that you'll be able to bring us some guidance on what we need to do or how we can better prepare for these situations.
Yes, yes. And as you said, it's something I heard a lot of times in some of my classes. It's like you may not be able to completely stop all risk, but one thing you can do is you can mitigate and you can do what you can to reduce. So one thing to do, which and a very important thing to do, is preparation. So I'm glad that we're having this discussion today. And one thing that a lot of financial experts recommend, one of the first things they recommend is building an emergency fund. An emergency fund, it depends on who you talk to, but a lot of analysts will often say you should have anywhere between 3 to 12 months of expenses saved up. Some would say 3 to 6 months if you have a pretty stable job. Others say maybe 6 to 12 months if you're the primary breadwinner, self-employed, or if you work in the industry, where layoffs are common, they'll say 6 to 12 months. So, for example, if you're making about, let's say, $4,000 a month, and you're going to prepare for 3 months, you want to have about $12,000, saved up. 6 months, it'll be six times 4,000, which is $24,000. And I know that for most people to hear numbers like that, you hear, well, how can I ever do that? How,
Right.
how can I ever get to that point? And there's it's an old joke. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. If you try to do the whole thing, it'll never work. And it's the same thing with savings. It's 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time, one paycheck at a time. So an important thing to do, and one thing you want to do is you want to increase your cash flow. And one thing that I would definitely recommend, this is so important. I've done this and I've seen a huge benefit, is to create a household budget. Have something that shows your monthly income, your expenses, and your savings. A lot of people, myself included, sometimes you don't realize how much money you have going to different places. And now in this world where everything now is a subscription service, they're making everything subscription. At one time you would buy something and then that would be, you never have to think about the company again. Now everybody wants a subscription service. And sometimes what happens is you sign up for something, 30-day subscription, you say, I'm going to cancel it in 29 days, you forget. And then next thing you know, you're paying for this. I've heard about people paying for the same subscription 2 or 3 times. Like, for example, having two Netflix or three Netflix accounts and not even realize it and paying for it. So and it's a little work, and it might, it may take a little time initially. But one thing you absolutely want to do is create a household budget where you see all your money coming in, everything coming out, and then see what you are left with. And it may surprise you.
So let me ask you this, just a little bit of what you talked about. So we say we're going to have a household budget. Is this an Excel sheet? Is this an app? Is this something on your refrigerator? Like, where is this household budget?
Okay, so there's several different ways you can do it. You have some services that are free, and then you have some that are paid. Some that where you actually have to pay for it. So, and you mentioned Excel. Excel is a great one. That's what I use. So have an Excel spreadsheet that I use. You can also have, what is it called? Google Numbers. I'm
Google
sorry. Let me
Sheets. Is that
actually.
what Google
Yeah,
Sheets?
Google.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Google Sheets. Yes, I'm sorry. I don't use that one, but yeah, that's another one as well. And you have several different ones. They're not really too hard to find, but just some examples of some other free ones. You got, now I haven't used these, so I can't tell you how good they work, but these are just some options, something to look into. You have something called Every Dollar Free, which is I think it's free and paid, but they have a free version. You also have something called Empower Personal Dashboard, which is another one that's free. And as you said, Google Sheets. If you want a low cost option, there's one called You Need a Budget, YNAB. From my understanding, that's a pretty decent one. It's one where you pay, but that one's a pretty good one. Something else called Monarch Money. So all of these are different options. You can easily Google them. And as I said, some are free, some you pay for, and they'll really help you see where your money is going to better keep track of it.
Okay, so everyone should have some type of place where they're recording all of their, they have a budget. So when you say budget, we should have, like, we should say this is how much we're going to pay for going out to eat if we're going out to eat. And this is how much we're going to pay for all our bills. And then this is how much is going to go into our savings. And we stay within that. And it's in some form of sheet or app that everybody can see and stay accountable for. Is that right?
Yeah. So the first thing to
Okay.
do is to do like a snapshot just to see where all your money's going. And so that's the first thing, just to see, how much you got coming in, how much you got going out. After you do that, um, at that point, you would, pretty much do what you said, where you would say, okay, uh, you need, I would suggest having a goal. Goals are really important. If think about it, when you get on the road, you don't just drive, unless you're just going for, a drive just for the sake of a drive. But when you
Right.
get on the road, you're going somewhere, you have a destination. If you're
Yes.
using GPS, you put something in that GPS. So you have something, a place where you're going. It's going to show you how long it's going to take to get there. It breaks all these things down. And so it's that same way. After you figure out where all your money is going, you need to have some type of goal. So in this situation, we were talking about having an emergency fund, which is anywhere between 3 and 12 months. You have to decide what's going to be best for you. And so once you have that goal, now you got to come out. How am I going to get there? So let's say, for example, you come up with a goal of saving $500 a month, and you say I'm going to save $500 a month. I want to have, uh, you know, let's just say if you're doing $500 a month, you can have 6,000 by the end of the year. I'm going to have $6,000 by the end of the year. So after you have that figured out, you look within your budget to see if you can do that. Is that like something that's reasonable? And you can say, yeah, I can do that. I can save $500 a month, and that's when you start to do your breakdowns. But it's very important to actually make a goal and then see, where your money, how much money you got going out, and how much you got coming in, and then that lets you know where you need to cut. Because that I realize some people are in a position they can't cut anything. They're
Right.
paying for their basic essentials, and they're going to be in a different situation. They're going to have to deal with some cost cutting, which we can talk about that as well. But for the individuals who have extra money left over by the end of the month, At that point, you can decide, I want to be able to save this much money, and then you can start putting that into an account in order to reach that goal.
So you brought up what I was thinking as well. For someone who has money left over, that's great. That would work for them to start putting some money aside and making some cuts. And but for someone who, when they look at all their bills, they see where their money's going, even if they cut out every subscription, they cut out eating out, they still don't have enough money to pay all their bills. How do they plan for a financial emergency?
Okay, so you have, when it comes down to it, you often have two options. In order to save money, you have to increase your money or you have to decrease spending. So those are pretty much the normal two ways. You got to increase what you got coming in, or you got to decrease what you have going out. And sometimes there are situations where people could, in essence, spend less if they just made different decisions. There are some people who purchase cars every 3 years because they think, man, I just got to have a new car, you know. And so sometimes these individuals, by doing that, they could, in essence, have more money. But the problem is they keep buying new cars, every few years, and they're doing, making decisions to keep themselves in that situation. So a situation like that, one thing I heard somebody suggest is have your first car. Doesn't have to be a used car. I mean, excuse me, it doesn't have to be a new car. You a lot of times you want something to get you
Right.
from point A to point B. Research and see what is a good car known for going hundreds of thousands of miles. See if you can find one of those cars used that's not too much money, and pay that off as quickly as you can. And then what you do is keep that car as long as you can. Another strategy I heard someone make is to continue making a car payment, even when you don't have a car payment.
Mhm.
You continue to put that money away so that when that car finally does break down, when your mechanic says, I'm sorry, outside of a miracle, this car is done, you already have a substantial down payment. If not, all the money you need to buy another car. Sometimes it's a lot of pressure to go out and buy something really fancy with all these bells and whistles, and sometimes people will do that just to impress other people. But that's not the best thing to do. The
Right.
main thing of a car is you want something safe. You want something that's going to be reliable, and you want something that gets you from point A to point B. So sometimes it's the decisions we make ahead of time. Now, if you're already in the midst of something, another thing to do is look at other places where you can save money. So, for example, like this is something that I did. You're going to have to look at your own situation. I don't know our situation, but I'll share you something that I did. When we got new car insurance, um, we used to have, I think, a $0 deductible. And the $0 deductible for the old company we were with wasn't that much more than a $500 deductible. But with this new company, the $0 deductible was substantially more than the $500 deductible. It will cost $600 a year to have a $0 deductible. So my thinking, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense for me to spend $600 every year to probably save $500 one day.
Right.
So what I did was I just went with the $500 deductible, and then I took a portion of that money that I would have been spending, and now that I could start putting away. And so that's exactly what I did. So I started off, and this is something else you want to do. You want to automate as much as you can. If you say, I'm going to do this every week, you may do it, you may not. What you want is you want the money to automatically come out of your account and to go into something else. That way you don't have to rely on you doing it. So that's what I did. It wasn't a lot. Let's say it was like $20 a week or something like that. It wasn't a lot. And I had that automatically come out of my account and go into another account so that by the time the year was done, I had enough money in that account to pay for my deductible if I needed to. And then after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I've saved way more money than out of, I've saved significantly more than $500.
Right.
So it's different things like that. People sometimes have insurance that they don't need. Sometimes, so that's something to do as well. Go through some of your insurances just to make sure you're not over covered, you have the right coverage. There's different things that you can do like that here and there. Now, if you've done all those things and it's like there's still nothing left, you may have to either look to possibly look to, for a promotion or even a second job. There are a lot of individuals that we know, myself included. Well, when I had my first child, I ended up having to get a second job. During that time, I didn't have to do it forever, but I had to do it for that time span. In order to pay, because I made I say I made a decision. I ended up buying a house and having a child all within 1 year of each other.
Right.
So my expenses changed dramatically in that 1 year time. So
Yes.
what I had to do was go get a second job. Didn't have to do it forever, but I had to do it for that time period. So if you've cut everywhere that you could possibly cut, if you've done all of this and you're still in a place, you may have to look at possibly getting a second job as just another way to bring in some more money.
Okay. I mean, those are really good, helpful things for people to think about, having to find more money or have to reduce those expenses. And I know for some it can be very hard, especially if you're already in a deficit when you look at the
Uh,
amount of
and
money
speaking of second
that
jobs,
you
a
have.
second job doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out and do another 9 to 5. You have a lot of people who have a lot of different talents, and so you might have some. A lot of people call it a side hustle. So you may have some people who know how to braid hair, and that's something you can do on the side. You have people who have been trained and know how to fix vehicles. You have a lot of people who have different talents and things like that. So getting a second job doesn't always mean you got to go out and have another straight 9 to 5. A second job could mean you taking and you're using some of the talent that you have in order to bring in some more money.
I appreciate that. That was very helpful too. So yeah, what other I know you said you had I jumped in with that question. What other things should we be doing to help us prepare if, for a, hopefully never, but a financial emergency? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right, everyone, and sorry about that, Abiyaku. It looks like we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I think we are back on. So, yes, please go ahead. My question to you was you'd given us some really good information on how to prepare and if we don't have extra money, what to do. I wanted to know what else do you have for us that we may be able to implement to help us with preparing for a financial situation.
Yes, another one is maintaining adequate insurance. You know, um,
Hmm.
I forgot the numbers, but if I remember correctly, the majority of bankruptcies come from health insurance debt. And I realized that health insurance is very expensive, and from my understanding, got even more expensive this year. So I know it's not the most, I know it's not the easiest thing to do. I know it's one of those things that's easier said than done. But to the best of your ability, just to maintain health insurance, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, disability insurance. So one of my professors, when I was in school, said a friend of his who made pretty good money ended up getting in some type of accident, and he couldn't work for a long period of time, and he really struggled. And I don't think he had disability insurance. Now, eventually, I think he recovered and was able to, catch back up. But it was a long, difficult, arduous process. And because a lot of times when a person making a lot of money, they have big bills as well. A lot of times you say, oh, they're making so much money, they'll be okay. Not realizing, yeah, they may be making a lot, but they also have big bills as well. So this
Right.
person didn't have any type of disability insurance, got injured, and really didn't have much money coming in, and had to struggle for some time. And then life insurance, and for high net individuals, umbrella insurance. That's another good thing to do as well. Um, I know you've touched on this in the past. You talked about having estate planning documents like a will, financial
Yes.
power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, like updated beneficiaries designations. Those things are very important. Definitely want to have cash on hand. You want some savings account, checking account, and you really want to have money to the side so that you don't have to use credit cards. I think credit card debt right now is at an all-time high, and it's very easy. It's so easy. The credit cards make it super easy to go into that credit card debt. And what you want to do is you want to be your own credit card. You want to put money to the side that's set in a specific account. Because why do most people use credit cards? A lot of people don't just use them just to use them. They use them during emergencies. Something
Right.
comes up, car repair, house repair, whatever, at two, three, $4,000, and it's like you don't want to do it, but you got to do it. So a
Yes.
good thing to do is to for you to become your own credit card, where you're putting money into an account every month. So if something does take place, you can be your own credit card, and then you make sure you have to pay yourself back. So those are just a few more things that you can do in order to help prepare, in case something comes up.
So sometimes they'll have money in the savings. They'll put money towards there and they may have saved up X amount of dollars. And then this happens, it's always said like you get a tax return, then all of a sudden something needs to use your tax return. You're expecting that money to come and then all of a sudden something happens. Well, when should we be using what we've allotted? Like what constitutes an emergency? Because I've seen situations where people have saved up money and then a family member needs to borrow money and they want to help them, or a bill comes up that they forgot about and then all of a sudden their money is gone, and that 6 months or 12 months that they've spent saving up this money is not there. So when should we say no, we're not going to take from that emergency fund, this is not an emergency for it, and when should we say yes?
And so an actual emergency fund, it, it,
I know
it's
it's a
it's
weird
kind of hard to
question.
say what an emergency is for each.
Right.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand now. It's hard to say what an emergency is for each individual person, but an emergency fund, for me, the way I look at that is I'm not touching that money, and unless if I don't use it, there's going to be dire consequences. So this is why you want to have different pots of money. You want to have a pot of money where you use this money to pay your bills, and you pay for your daily expenses. You want a pot of money where you can spend a little bit of money. Well, some people, well, they'll say save every single penny, don't spend any money on anything. And for a lot of people, that's difficult to do. A lot of
Right.
us, we work really hard. By the end of the week, you might want to, I don't know, go out and get a slice of pizza or whatever it is, that different people do. Somebody may say, yeah, I'm gonna whatever the thing may be. Like I said, take the family out, for some, like I said, pizza and ice cream or something like that. So you want to be able to do things like that. So you want to have a pot of money where you can do that. And then you're going to have an actual emergency fund, like I said, where you don't touch that unless if you don't use this money, there will be dire consequences. And then you also want to have another fund. This is almost like when I was saying be your own credit card. So the actual emergency fund, you're not going to touch that unless it's like I said, dire consequences. But then you have an account where it's like this is your credit card. So
Okay.
when, like you said, something comes up like that bill or something like that, you have that money right there for that situation. But for the actual emergency fund, you really don't want to touch that. I would suggest you have it like for mine. I don't. I, I don't have like Zelle attached to it. I don't have anything attached to it where I could easily take the money out. I want the money just to go in there and to stay there and not really think about it. Because if it's easy to take out, you may just take out a little bit here and there. So that
Right.
you only want to take out in a situation where if you don't, it'll be like emergency or like I said, dire consequences.
Okay, so that's really good because so many things happen in our daily life, and it can feel like an emergency. It can feel like something that someone needs to respond to. But you're right. You can't make that decision so quickly. You need to think about it and make sure this is an actual emergency. Because once that
Yes,
money is spent, it's gone until you raise it again.
yes, yes. And for a lot of people, it's not the easiest thing to do. you know and I know sometimes it may seem daunting, but even having something like $10 a week, come out $10 or $20 a week, just something, as long as you're doing, do something, even if
Yes.
it's $5 a week, do something, so at least you're putting something away, and the money will add up. It's, money will add up sometimes more quickly than you realize.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, so I hope our listeners that are listening, you've given us some good information that if they're not implementing it, or if they want to, this is something that they can start doing, because you've given us some smaller things we could do. $10. In earlier episodes, we said if you turn down, a coffee, maybe you don't go out to eat this week. Maybe you say no to a subscription. That money we could go ahead and put in an emergency
Yeah.
fund or put in a household
Yeah.
fund for the bigger picture. So all these are things that are tangible that we can do.
Yes, absolutely. And what we're sharing today is just basic educational information. We're not giving anybody specific advice. If you want to get more specific advice for your situation, I would suggest you reach out to a professional, whether it's a financial planner or some type of financial expert. Reach out to those individuals. We're just sharing basic information stuff and, some things that we've done. But as far as for your personal situation, if you can reach out to an advisor, or a financial planner, and they can really help structure a plan for you and your family to help your specific needs.
I appreciate that. And if when I know we talked about it before, when you come on again, I think we need to talk to the people about what is a financial planner and what are the benefits of that. Because when now maybe I'll go back and ask my parents if they had a financial planner, but I don't remember us going to see a financial planner, and that may be something that can benefit a lot of people. And so yeah, maybe on another episode you can delve into that a little bit more and tell us what the benefits of a financial planner are and what we should look for in one. How much do they cost? Like, because those are questions that I would have.
Yes. Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Okay, awesome. All right, yes. So anything else that, and like he said, the disclaimer, these are suggestions, ideas, but you want to talk to a professional before you do anything that can affect your finances. But is there anything else from your experience or what you saw that could benefit our listeners here who are, they want to be in a place that if an emergency happened, these are some things that they can start doing.
One thing is just reiterating the budget.
Okay.
I think a lot of people really have no idea what they got coming in and going out. And sometimes by doing that, you'll be surprised. Just sharing one more, another thing that I've done is I've taken um, all the places where I owe money, like reoccurring, amounts of money, and I put that in the spreadsheet as well, so I can actually see the money going down, and I can say, okay, over 6 months, my debt is going down X amount. So that also helps as well, because by looking at that, if I know if I go out and I buy this brand new, I'm gonna say this brand new treadmill that costs $2,000 to 3,000, and then I look at this spreadsheet and I say, man, it took me 2 months to get down $3,000. And I think, well, do I really want to add that 3,000 back? That's something else that kind of gives me pause and make sure that if I'm buying something, I'm getting something that I really need, as opposed to just getting something that I really want. When I can look at the total of all the debt that I have and see the numbers going down, it just makes me think twice. And so that's something else to do as well. Because like I said, they make it so easy to spend the money. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to pay it off. So that's just another I'm gonna say wall of protection that's helped me and slow me down from not buying unnecessary things.
Well, I want to thank you, Abiyahu, for everything that you shared. I think definitely having that budget will help us see something. Because I know many times you're just in the minute and you may say, oh, I really want to watch this show, or I really want to do something. Well, let me get this subscription. Let me buy this video. Let me rent it. But if you have things written down and you have that budgeting, that will help us that will help you hold yourself accountable. So I really appreciate you being here with us today. We're going to wrap up this episode as we're coming down to our time. But if this conversation sparked any questions for you, or maybe you have a story to share that could help someone else, please connect with us. Visit bearsheetcorporation.org or email us at info@bearsheetcorporation.org or call us at 844-405-3924. Thank you for spending this time with us today. Thank you, Abiyahu, for joining us this week. This is Bear Sheet, building stability, preserving legacy, and strengthening the community we call home. Join us next time as we continue these conversations that help families move forward with clarity, confidence, and dignity.